It's not just politicians who bring rallies to the slums of Nairobi. This is a peace march. If anyone gets upset about the election result, the violence will break out here. And so they're urging restraint, respect and unity. Rachel McCarley is a feminist and an activist in Mathare, one of the biggest slums in the capital. The march is straddling two wards with different politics.
Kenyans, if they are told the election was free and fair, they won't go to violence. That one I'm sure. Even here in the slums, as much as they are using words to criminalize us, telling us it's a hot spot, if they know the election are free and fair, they cannot disturb.
Rallies have been romping across the country for weeks. This is Opposition Orange, and green, and blue, and white. The National Super Alliance, they're called, NASA. 5 opposition parties on one ticket. Raila Odinga is their presidential candidate, son of the country's first vice president. Since then, the Odingas have always been in opposition. It's his 4th attempt to get the top job, and at 72, probably his last. And that makes the stakes even higher. The car is red, the sign reads. The driver is drunk, and the conductor is a thief. Yes, red is the colour of Jubilee. Drivers and conductors aside, their alliance won the last election. Their candidate is the incumbent, Uhuru Kenyatta, son of Kenya's first president. The big political dynasties live on more than 50 years after independence. The success of this whole ballot depends on what happens in this building. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, or IEBC, is the arbiter of the whole process. In a country where vote rigging has been suspected in the past and is expected in the future, their computerized voting system is the key to free and fair elections. If it works, fixing the result will be an awful lot harder to get away with. The public demonstration went well, but if the computer system fails, Kenya has a big problem. And given what has happened in the past week, people need reassuring.
In terms of resource management,
Chris Msando was the acting head of IT at the Electoral Commission, responsible for the computer. The system's safe with me, he said, but then he disappeared. This time last week, he left the IEBC building and went just round the corner to Club 7. He was a local. He was meeting a 21-year-old graduate student known as Carol. What happened over the next few hours is a lot less certain. His Land Rover was seen driving across Nairobi. Cameras picked up images of the car. At one point, 4 people may have been inside, a large woman in the front seat. Elsewhere, he was on the phone, looking agitated. Then the trail went cold. First, his car was recovered on one side of town. Then, on the other side of the city, 2 bodies were discovered. Chris Msando had been tortured. Both he and the young graduate, Carol Ngumbu, had been strangled to death. People jumped to their own conclusions, and it's put the country on edge.
So the court can decide that this is in public interest?
A senior Kenyan lawyer wants a commission of inquiry for this and other cases of what he calls forced disappearances.
First, apart from being a chilling effect on the general populace and even other employees of the electoral management body, it again just highlights how we have, for too long, we have left extrajudicial killings to go on unaddressed.
Corruption is a huge part of the problem. This footage was filmed by citizen journalists. It shows police accepting bribes. It's common and just the tip of the iceberg.
A police officer stops, just opens the door and grabs something.
John Alanebu is an investigative journalist for Africa Uncensored in Kenya.
Corruption is endemic in this country. It's taken over very many parts of government operations. A third of our resources are lost, believed to be lost or misappropriated every year. It's driven by a lot of private sector impunity, and I think impunity is the word. Nothing ever gets resolved. No one ever goes to jail. That's the bigger problem, the bigger issue in Kenya.
10 years ago, terrible post-election ethnic violence killed more than 1,200 people, amid claims it was rigged, but nobody has faced justice. That's why people are so afraid now. International criminal court charges against the Deputy President and President Kenyatta collapsed when witnesses died mysteriously. Last election, the computer system failed. Rachel's friends in Mathare are worried it'll happen again.
We are a bit scared, especially as women.
And the way things are going, it is like we are all scared.
Election, new to story rigging.
He's saying the main issue that we have in election now is about rigging of election.
Peaceful. Election equal free and fair.
She's saying it's going to be peaceful as long as there's free, fair and credible election. But if there isn't free, fair and credible election.
And what happens, I mean, this is obviously a group of opposition supporters. What happens if Raila Odinga doesn't win?
We as youth, we want to live in a peaceful community. But if it's happened by mistake, the Jubilee government rigs election, he's saying we as NASA supporters will have to fight with the government.
If he loses, but it's a fair election, I mean, what happens then?
If Raila loses and he ataenda kotini, people will be okay, nothing will happen. But inaenda 50-50, 50-50, and then if he came early, we will not agree on that.
So if it's really close, there's more chance of being violence?
Yeah.
This is one of the most important elections in Africa, in one of its more hopeful democracies. What's significant now is not who wins, but how the loser takes defeat.